Surveillance should not be allowed. There's a quote, "You have to fight for your privacy or you'll lose it," by an American businessman, Eric Schmidt. And my first argument is people don't like always being watched by the government. And the Patriot Act, or 44% of all Americans say the Patriot Act goes too far. And if you don't know what the Patriot Act is, it's like when you go through airport security and stuff, they have you take off your shoes and search through all your luggage and stuff. And 47% of independent voters oppose the Patriot Act. The second argument is that the FBI can fly surveillance aircraft over cities and track people through their cell phones and see every text and stuff sent from their phone.
Resolved. We need more surveillance in schools. A study was done in 14 schools in California. They were given money by the government to put up cameras on the outside of their schools, and it stopped almost all of the vandalism. It stopped all the issues on the bus, and it stopped the theft that was going around. One of the bonuses about more surveillance, it'll stop the vandalism and it'll save the schools a lot of money if they don't have to pay for broken windows and stealing stuff. And it'll keep kids out of trouble because if they see a camera and they want to vandalize something, they're not going to vandalize it because there's a camera there watching them. And then it stops bullying because if there's somebody tempted to bully someone, they're not going to feel the want to bully them because there's a camera right there watching everything that they do.
Resolved. Surveillance shouldn't be allowed in public places. Once you have lost your privacy, you have as much privacy as a goldfish fishing pool. Argument 1. Some baby cameras cost from $260 to $300. Researchers note the popular Philips Insight B120 retails for $150 can be easily hacked. And the hackers, they can watch the babies, and it often leads into a child abduction. And there are about 12,000 child abductions in the U.S. each year, and 74% end up in death of a child. Argument number 2, some camera systems for schools, they can cost around $500,000 or more, plus the annual fees for maintenance. And with the cameras, there are still 2.2 million crimes in schools each year.
Schools need more surveillance, and if we get cameras, do you know how much crimes these kids commit? Well, would you imagine that if these kids learn consequences, that brings the real meaning to the quote, "Do the right thing, even when nobody is watching." These kids, they won't get away with things if we have surveillance. Could you imagine that? If these crimes weren't committed, vandalism, theft, and wrong accusations, all these fights, they could be stopped with cameras. Think about that. No more violence in schools. How many of you have been bullied? What would you have done if you would have evidence to support you? 31% of male students have been in fistfights, and that's just males, not even females. The question is, imagine no more fistfights. You probably can't, except for surveillance cameras. That would be the only solution. These onlookers and the people involved in these fights, they could be proven guilty and held accounted for their actions. Sexual harassment court cases happen all over the world. They happen inside schools all the time. In fact, 81% of students experience it all the time. They can be settled the correct way with evidence and settled it all if we had these cameras. All of these people that commit these crimes to innocent teenagers can be found guilty. Cameras are definitely needed, don't you see?
Resolved. Surveillance should not be used. Privacy advocates warn schools because Google and other websites suck information out of kids. They track what they do online, and all kids don't feel comfortable. Students feel unprotected when cameras are at schools. They watch us like hawks. Without a doubt, students don't like it. In an article, it states that it feels like students have lost privacy.
Okay, so everyone has given their first arguments, right? You're gonna get 1 minute to talk about your rebuttal with your partner, decide what you want your rebuttal and your closing to say, and then we'll continue in 1 minute. All right, that's a minute. We're gonna start again with the con side for their rebuttal. Audience, go ahead and pay attention.
Do we say our closing right now?
Yep, you'll do rebuttal and closing.
So they say it stops crimes, but the more surveillance we have, there's gonna be more ways to get around it, more ways for people to commit more crimes without being on surveillance. And if the more times people can be told they can't do something, they're more likely to want to do that more. Anna Ivanek is a quote from Anna Ivanek. It says, "I like to have privacy. I don't like people knowing what I do in my free time. I'm a very shy person, but I know people want to know more." My opponent said that surveillance cameras invade your privacy. Well, I disagree because, like they said, the government can just look at your phone messages. They're not just gonna look at random people's stuff. They're not gonna be huddled around the computers like, oh, Joe's texting his wife again, let's see what he has to say. And they're gonna look at like suspicious people like terrorists and stuff, which can stop things like 9/11 from ever happening again. And I have a quote that says, "You'll never understand it until it happens to you." And it means like, let's say you have a friend that's getting bullied, and there's nothing you can do about it because there's no evidence, because there's no cameras they can pin it on somebody, and all of a sudden you want cameras so then you can help your friend out who's being bullied.
My opponent said that security cameras, they can stop crime. But CNN News noted that it only stopped 4% of crimes in the US last year. And it does not stop all crime because they aren't on all the time. And in banks, some criminals hack into the cameras, and they look at all the card information, and they find ways to break into the bank so they can get all the money. And as a closing thought, Bill Gates says, should surveillance really be used for petty crimes like jaywalking, or should we have police officers on the street stopping drugs?
My opposing partners, they say, hackers always look at babies. Well, when these cameras cost $200,000, these hackers, they won't be able to get into the system. Not when they are $200,000 and guaranteed. These hackers, they will also be caught with the rest of the bullies. My opponent also says that these cameras are costly. Well, let me tell you this. Would you rather pay for a $200,000 loss for cameras or $1 million worth of lawsuits? Do the math. $200,000 is a lot less than $1 million. And as a closing, Mahatma Gandhi, a wondrous person, once said, at first they ignore you, then they bully you, or then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. The bullies, they will ignore you. Then they will laugh at you when you try and make a stand. And then, as their last weak chance, they will fight you. But we will win with these video surveillance cameras. These bullies, they will be held responsible for their actions.
My opponent says it will stop fist fights, but there's a new law that you cannot videotape fist fights at all. It may be true, but it doesn't even stop all crimes. It may lead to baby monitors being passed. Ultimately, students in schools should have the choice to have surveillance or not. Because once you've lost privacy, you've lost a very valuable thing. Would you rather have lawsuits or build a Trump wall? Trump wall. Trump wall.
Done? Round of applause for the debaters.